Hey, today we're talking about creatine, one of my favorite supplements and one of the most popular supplements in the fitness industry for good reason. But today we're going to talk about it from the perspective of midlife and longevity. So creatine's well known to help you build muscle and strength and to improve your energy when you're training. But what's less known about it is that it also has some really cool longevity benefits, including potentially improving your brain health as you get older and even helping with your bone mass. And we're going to talk about all of that today. So before we get into the longevity benefits of creatine, I wanted to talk about what it actually is. So creatine is a natural compound produced in your body when you consume protein. So when you consume animal protein, things like beef and poultry and fish, your body makes creatine and it's used by your muscles and your brain. Now that's a really simple way of explaining it, but basically your body has a daily requirement for creatine. It may be as little as about 2 grams per day. However, as we're going to talk about in this video, the longevity research suggests that you may well need a little bit more, somewhere along the lines of even 7 grams per day if you want to get the full benefit of it. Now it's hard to get 7 grams per day from food alone. You would have to consume quite a bit of meat, and especially if you're somebody who follows a plant-based diet or a vegetarian diet or even a really low-calorie diet, you're probably not going to come close to how much you need for longevity or even the muscle building effects of creatine. And the recommendations in that regard are usually about 5 grams per day. So that's why supplements are so popular, and that's why so many people supplement with it when they're doing a weight training program. So the first thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to creatine is how it can help you build muscle and strength. This is why it's so popular in the fitness industry. But this is also really relevant to us as aging adults. So I don't like to be somebody who's negative about aging, and I don't ever like to say that it gets harder as we get older. But unfortunately, it does get harder as we get older to build muscle for a variety of reasons. So let's say, for example, you're in your 40s, you might be finding that there are a whole lot of things affecting your ability to build muscle. You might be too busy or too tired to train regularly. You might be having joint problems or injuries. You've got changing hormones, and there's just a whole lot going on as we get older that can impact on our ability to build muscle. And then there's also natural aging processes. So on this channel, I've talked a lot about sarcopenia, which is the natural loss of muscle as we age, and that happens decade by decade. We slowly lose muscle. However, on top of that, we've got something happening called anabolic resistance, which means that you're just not able to build muscle as easily as you used to. So not only are you losing it, but it's harder to build it. And then you've got a whole lot of other chaos going on in your 40s and as you get older. And so all of that's impacting on your ability to build muscle. And so that's why I think any supplement that can give you a natural edge to building muscle is important to consider. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about creatine today. So I won't get into the science of it all because it's really complicated and it would be a lot to cover today. But basically what you need to know is that when you're taking creatine, the idea is that you'll be able to train harder for longer. So it increases the intensity at which you can train, and it also improves your energy when you're training. And so that's a really great benefit if you're somebody who's older and struggling with energy. The other thing that creatine's been shown to do is increase your strength. And this is one of my favorite things about creatine. So I wanted to use myself as an example so you could understand what it could potentially do for you. So I've been taking creatine on and off for over 10 years now. And every time I cycle onto creatine again, after about 6 to 8 weeks, I noticed a significant jump in strength in the gym. And so what will happen is I will just all of a sudden notice that I'm putting the weights up. I'm lifting more weights than I had been previously. And it just happens usually at about that 6 to 8 week mark after starting a cycle of creatine. So for example, in the gym recently, because I'm at about that 8 week mark now with taking creatine, I had been off of it for a while and I'm back on it. I've noticed that I'm putting the weights up on a lot of exercises. So taking the overhead press, for example, for the last year, I've been stuck at about 8 to 10 reps with 15 kilos and doing 4 sets. So I've been kind of stuck there for a long time. And then at about that 8-week mark, all of a sudden one day in the gym, I smashed out 4 sets of 12 with the 15 kilos, which was a significant jump in what I had been able to do for a long time. And I thought, there's the creatine kicking in. And then right around the same time, I went from being able to only do about 1 to 2 pull-ups to being able to do about 5 pull-ups in a set. And so I think that's the creatine as well, because I haven't really been practicing my pull-ups. And so that's the only reason I could think of for why all of a sudden my strength has just significantly jumped with them. So that's a really cool thing about creatine, because if you are stronger and able to lift heavier weights, then you're going to build more muscle. And the cool thing about creatine is that it's been really well researched in seniors as well. And these benefits have been shown in studies with people in their 60s and even older. So they've done studies showing that seniors who exercise with creatine get significantly stronger and gain more muscle than seniors who exercise without taking creatine. And if you're somebody who's worried about being a strong, independent senior, then that's something that's really worth considering. And the final thing I just wanted to mention about creatine from this sense is that another thing that it may potentially do is help slow muscle loss in periods where you can't train. So it has been studied quite a bit for when people are immobilized, for example, in a cast. And the research is a bit mixed here, but it does make sense given what creatine does in the body that it could potentially help slow muscle loss. So I thought it was worth mentioning in this video, because muscle loss is obviously a big concern as we get older, and especially if we do have periods of time when we are not able to train. Now, it's really well known that creatine can help with muscle mass and energy in the gym, but what's less well known about creatine is that it can potentially help with brain health as you get older. And this is a really exciting benefit of creatine, because we're all concerned about how we're going to age. We're all concerned about dementia. And creatine is being widely studied for conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, for traumatic brain injury. It's of interest for things like depression and mental fatigue and brain fog. And it's been shown to help potentially improve memory, especially in vegetarians or people who don't eat a lot of meat. There's a lot of potential for creatine to help with your brain health as you get older. And I wanted to mention it today because for me personally, I'm worried about dementia. I'm worried about how I'm going to be as an older adult. And any supplement that could give me an edge is worth considering, especially a supplement that seems to be as safe as creatine is, which we'll talk about a little bit later. The next benefit of creatine that I wanted to talk about is how it may potentially help with bone health, because this is really relevant to us as aging women. So the first way that it might help with bone health is simply by helping increase your muscle mass. So the more muscle that you have, the increased stress and pull on your bones, which is going to help with bone accretion, so increasing your bone over time. So that's one way that it might help. Creatine may also play a role in the bone cycle. So if you aren't familiar with how bone building works, your bones undergo a cycle of remodeling where they're building up and breaking down, and creatine has been shown to increase the activity of osteoblasts, which are the cells that help you build bone. And that's really exciting because as we get older, that's really important. We want to do everything possible to increase our potential to build bone, because it gets really hard to build bone as we get older and as our hormones change and those sorts of things. The results of the studies around creatine and bone health are a bit mixed, but it may be because some of the studies use a lower dose of creatine, whereas some of them are using around 7 to 9 grams per day. So that's something to consider if you want to get the bone building benefits of creatine. And for me personally, this is a really exciting potential benefit of creatine because I have a history of osteopenia and I have osteoporosis in my family. And I think that anybody who has osteoporosis concerns should consider absolutely everything possible to make sure that you're maximizing the amount of bone that you have going into older age to help prevent osteoporosis or slow its progression. The final benefit of creatine that I wanted to talk about is how it can help improve your appearance. So creatine pulls water into your cells, which means it volumizes your cells. And when it comes to muscles, that means that it makes your muscles look more full. So if you're somebody who has visible muscles, this means that you're going to have more full round muscles when you're taking creatine. And for me personally, this is probably my most favorite thing about taking creatine. I've noticed that when I'm not taking it, I feel like I look quite flat and I just feel like I can't see my muscles as well. And then when I'm taking creatine, I just feel like my muscles are so much rounder and fuller and just so much more visible. And I absolutely love that about creatine. Now, I should say all of this with a word of caution. Creatine can make your weight go up a little bit. And so for ladies who are concerned about the weight on the scale, it may not be the supplement for you. But I do think that it makes you look better because it does give you those round, full muscles. And so this is something that you would have to weigh up if you're considering taking it. The final thing that I was going to do is quickly run you through how I take creatine. So I take the recommended dose in the fitness industry, which is 5 grams per day. Sometimes you'll see a loading phase recommended where you take 20 grams per day for a few days and then drop down to 5 grams per day. But it's pretty well known now that you don't have to do that loading phase, and in fact you might get less potential side effects if you just take that 5 grams per day and let it slowly saturate your muscles over time. And I take creatine monohydrate. That's the most widely studied form of creatine. You're going to see a lot of brands and a lot of different types of creatine, so just look for a basic creatine monohydrate if you're interested in trying it. Sometimes you'll see micronized creatine, which is basically just creatine monohydrate that has smaller particles, so it may mix better. The other thing I would say is don't buy anything with flavors or sweeteners or any of that sort of thing. Just buy something that's plain creatine. It doesn't have a flavor and it mixes well with any other liquid, or you can throw it in your smoothies and you're not really going to notice that it's there. So for me personally, I take mine in my pre-workout because that's the easiest time of day for me to take it. And there is some research that having it around your workout may help your muscles take it up a little bit better. But if you are going to take creatine, just take it when works best for you. So those are the longevity benefits of creatine. As always, when it comes to supplements, you should do your own research. If you look into the safety of creatine, it has a good safety profile. It has very few side effects. However, you may come across some stuff about it potentially affecting your kidneys. That's kind of old school. People don't worry about that anymore, but get into it, read about it, and allay any concerns that you may have about it, and then make the decision for yourself. If you have any other questions about creatine, I'm happy to answer them in the comments of this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.